summarize this year, like, without like giving me a paragraph for you, how it's been for you.
Um, hmm. You know, let's say not necessarily a bad experience, but something that's like not good or bad that you just don't really remember much of,
Yeah.
just because it's like it's gone by so fast. Like it's crazy to me that it's already about to be the last month of the year. December 2021 is literally about right around the corner. We're a month away. And I just remember being excited for 2020 Olympic trials, Olympic year, and then COVID happens, everything's postponed, and then you can barely travel, and then it's just like the same day over and over and over again. It's not that it is, but it's like it's just you're limited to so much. There's not a lot you can do, and so for me, it's just been training, hanging out. I got a dog, so taking care of my dog,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, man, it's I don't know. It's there's been some cool things to come from it, but also some things I'm like, man, I'm ready for this year to be over.
Yeah, I hear you. You came on when we kind of first started the show, or not too long after March, maybe early April. If I told you it was going to be the end of November and we're not still doing the show, but we're still dealing with this pandemic in the way that we are, right? And things aren't as open as maybe we thought they would. Like, what would you say if I was like, oh yeah, it'll be November and we'll still be doing this?
Yeah, I don't. I've been like, damn it. I don't know.
It just doesn't seem realistic. I guess the Groundhog's Day thing too
Yeah,
is something that everybody's really struggling with or dealing with, anyways. Okay, it
yeah.
has been kind of crappy, but how have you, and if so, have you taken advantage of this situation at all? I know you were reading a lot of books last time we talked, and I don't like
Yeah,
seemed like you're trying to deal with it the best you can. Are you still doing that, or
yeah,
has it just run you into the ground yet?
yeah. Uh, so I haven't been as consistent as I like, but I've started a couple new books too. Started reading this book called 11 Rings by Phil Jackson, who was head coach of Chicago Bulls when they won
Or
6 rings. Also head coach of the Lakers when they won 5 rings with Kobe and Shaq. And so it's been cool to just kind of see how he processes the game of basketball. And then not just that, but like his big thing was like understanding like cohesiveness of the organization and the players and trying to figure out how to get the players to be more and more selfless to play together as a unit. And he mentions different hurdles for both teams, but especially the Lakers. I remember him talking about like you put a team of NBA superstars that are
uh-huh.
already very well known and highly admired into Hollywood culture in the middle of LA where they become praised even more. And it's like, how do you get people to leave their egos behind and play selflessly as a team? You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's interesting. And then there's also like, he talks about like a couple different quotes. I remember there's one quote that I remember. I think he said the mantra for the Bulls after their first championship en route to their second championship for the team was something like, "You're only successful the moment you perform a successful act. You have to do it again." So it's not. It's like not clinging to. Okay, we did this last year. We're going to continue to do this. It's like okay, we were successful in that moment, but it was only in that particular moment. We have to repeat that. We have to do it again. So um, just makes me think about like wrestling and just sports in general. I think about guys like people who have stayed at the top of the world at an elite level for a consecutive amount of years in a row. Guys like JB and plenty of other examples. Russian guys like Satiev and it's like I think those guys. I mean, there's no way you're able to sustain that level of success that consistently without like having some sort of similar approach. Like you're only successful the moment you perform a successful act. You have to do it again, right? Like
Yeah.
what I did last year doesn't guarantee success this year.
Right. No, I like it. And I'm interested. You know, one of the first things you mentioned is like he talked about cohesiveness and how important it is. And then
Yeah,
like these superstars put them in LA and the Hollywood, right?
yeah,
How can you apply that to wrestling, which is like not glamorous? They're not super. Nobody's really a superstar. Even JB's
yeah,
not like famous. Um, and
right,
and it's an individual sport, right? How can you? Is there something you
yeah,
take from that and apply it to wrestling, which is kind of different?
yeah. So one thing that I really liked what he talked about was egos. The first championship's the easiest, right? Because everybody wants it so badly, right?
Yeah,
But then once the first championship secured, now everybody all of a sudden has an ego. Um, there's this extreme amount of confidence, not just the city, but fans from all over the world or just from the U.S., right, are now, praising these athletes for winning a world championship in the NBA. And it's like, how do you not think you're the baddest dude on the planet? You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's like, and keep your ego in check. And so I think like each year, um, understanding like as you're winning, like okay, what is this going to reveal about my character, and how is this going to affect my ego and my confidence? Am I going to be less coachable? Right, because now all of a sudden I think I know what I need to do on my own. But what got me here in the first place was listening, playing together. You know what I mean, and
yeah,
just being coachable. And so I think with wrestling, it's similar, right? I think about my first 4 years as a college athlete before I never All American, but like those first 4 years, I'm really listening, paying attention, trying to be coachable, and trying to get on the same page as my coaches, and then you win an NCAA title, and you're even more confident now. There's a lot more respect. Suddenly, people have more interest, like in what comes out of your mouth and what you're
yeah.
saying, because there's an accolade behind it. And so, like, regardless of how much success I have or someone has, is like, okay, understanding, keeping my ego in check and remembering, okay, what's gotten me here and how do I continue to evolve in a way that continues to replicate that success.
Yeah. Have you in wrestling, and you don't have to name any names, if there's even, have you ever seen that happen where maybe somebody's ego did get too big and they maybe weren't, whether it's high school, college, or on the senior level, a national team camps, anywhere,
Mm.
where it's like in your head, you're like, this guy lose his way, or is he or she, right? Maybe not taking this seriously enough, or maybe think they got all the answers.
Yeah. No particular names are coming to mind, but I think like an example is someone who wins like a national title freshman or sophomore year and doesn't necessarily repeat immediately the next year.
Hmm.
And maybe that's not an ego thing. Maybe that's people have just done a better job like adjusting and figuring out their style.
Right.
It could be a lot of different things. Um, but I think too, like you also travel a lot after you win an NCAA championship because people want you to bring you out for camps and stuff like that. And so possibly like, okay, now there's more of an emphasis on, okay, how can I ride this wave and make a lot of money for myself this summer rather than putting an emphasis on training. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that might affect because now you're traveling a lot, you're teaching clinics, but you're not necessarily getting like the high level training that you would normally have done, as opposed to like when you weren't doing all those
Yeah.
clinics and stuff like that. So I think that's an example of how that could affect it and change that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think you'd have to go back and look at NCAA champs or Olympic champs or world champs that have won and then didn't necessarily repeat the next year, or have like um, won, didn't win, won again, right? And figure out, okay, like I wonder what, and ask them questions about, I wonder what was different. Because a
Sure.
lot of it is like, it's more internal stuff. It's really hard to get an idea of like what's affected because you're not going to know like what's really going on within the minds of an
Right.
NBA player in the Lakers organization unless you have a personal relationship with them like a coach.
Yeah.
Which I think is what's really cool about a book like 11 Rings, because Phil Jackson, who was the head coach, did have all of that. He knows the players and stuff like that, and he writes about it. So it's interesting to kind of hear it from the guy who led both teams.
Have you seen The Last Dance?
Yes,
It's awesome. It's
Yeah, I
really
have.
good.
Yo, so
It's
good.
and it's so crazy that there's, and I know that's mostly about Michael Jordan, but Phil Jackson's a big
Yeah,
part of it. And it's like there's this whole
yeah,
story and it finishes, and then you're like, oh, there's this whole other story with him in L.A. probably just as deep and dynamic. So I haven't
yeah,
read that book, but it makes me interested to like know what Phil Jackson's doing. Um,
yeah. I think too. Yeah, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. You think
I was just
too?
gonna say the Kobe and Shaq relationship, having to handle both of those because I think when Phil came in, he had a plan to build the team around Shaquille O'Neal. Is what he says in the book. Like
Yeah,
Shaq was going to be the player that they were going to build the organization around, and then obviously, I mean, we know what happened. You know, Shaq ended up leaving, and Kobe won a couple more championships without him. But yeah, man, just like he talks about Kobe's like stubbornness a little bit, but also like his work ethic, and also how he evolved as a player from the first championship to the fifth. How he took on more of a leadership role and guiding players as he got older. So it's interesting, right? Like I think about like Kobe started so young in the NBA, he went straight from high school. You know what I mean? So you think
yeah.
about the level of maturity a 20-year-old has as opposed to a 28, 30-year-old. It's a huge difference.
I can only imagine being 20 and being thrust into that role, not just like a normal 20-year-old in college, but like one of the
Yeah,
elite stars in the NBA. So that's such a different dynamic and it's such a thing. And then like the egos between Kobe and Shaq or whatever it is, like I can't think of
yeah,
really a situation. Maybe it happens in the U.S., but wrestlers just don't seem to have that type of ego as some in the
yeah.
NBA and Hollywood and everything else. So, um, all right, I want to switch gears a little bit.
All right.
RTC Cup is coming up
Yeah.
this weekend.
Yep.
When did you first hear about this RTC Cup? And when you first heard about it, did you know Wolfpack was part of it, or did you hear about it and then find out Wolfpack was going to do it?
I don't remember exactly when I found out about it, but I remember hearing about it and then not necessarily like knowing if it was like a surefire thing, if it was something that was really going to happen. And then I
Yeah,
just kind of had heard from Pat that Pat was like trying to get something like some contract for us to like sign so that way we could something about COVID protocol and like making sure that like he really wanted to prioritize us competing at this RTC Cup more than anything. And so then I was like, oh, okay, so we really are getting ready for this RTC Cup December 4th and 5th. And then it was just going to be me, Tommy, and Gwiz. And I think we were trying to convince Kevin to compete. And um, then we found out the college guys were going to wrestle, like, you know, Trent and Hayden and Camacho. So that was exciting. And I was excited because I'd never got to. It's been a while since I got to compete alongside those guys. So, one, excited to compete alongside those guys. And last time I competed with Gwiz, like, I guess it was the Alons in December. I was gonna say like in college though. His last college year was 2016. Mine was 2018. But so just excited to compete with him and Gwiz again as teammates.
yeah. And I don't even know the answer. When's the last time you competed in general?
Uh the Snyder match.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Rockfin, yeah,
How'd that
September
go?
19th. Not so good. I ended up getting tech falled.
Yeah, but I mean, how'd you feel? Was it just
Um, so I really so first just want to say kudos to Kyle. Wrestled phenomenally and wrestled a great match and um, was obviously he was the better wrestler that day and forced me to think about a lot. But also I felt like I was a little bit out of shape. So we're trying to work on that. And then also like I remember when Kale texted me about the match, asking me if I wanted to wrestle. I wasn't sure if I was going to go, and I remember telling him, "Hey, you know, can you wait until Tuesday? I was supposed to be traveling. Let me see if I can get a couple things switched around." But really, I wasn't traveling anywhere. I actually had a Raleigh orthopedic appointment on Tuesday to get my knee looked at, and I had to get an X-ray. And so I wanted to make sure that the doc was going to clear me for the September 19th competition,
yeah?
and so he did. And wasn't 100%, but it was good enough for me to compete and me to feel comfortable enough to like go out there and compete to win. And obviously didn't do enough, and there's a lot of things that I got to get better at still from that match. But um, 3 days afterwards, tweaked the same exact knee, the same exact way, doing live situations with Timmy McCall. So then
Yep.
didn't get to compete at senior nationals, which sucked. Really wanted to compete there. So that's kind of been the frustrating thing for me is just, it's like, man, I got no competitions, but it's like kind of feel banged up here and there. And so I feel good now, thankfully, but it's been a little bit of a battle for that.
Yeah. Like, I guess shape wise and whatnot compared to last time you competed, where do you feel you're at?
A lot better.
Yeah.
I'm excited to compete. Yeah. Excited. Um, I haven't had much competition at all this year. My only match in 2020 was the Snyder match on September 19th.
Yeah.
Really wanted to wrestle at senior nationals, um, just to get matches in. So I'm excited to just compete, man.
How about this? When's the
So
last time you wrestled in a dual meet? It was like in college, your last dual meet in college, I assume, or
yeah, 2018. Yeah,
do you remember
it's been a
like
while.
specifically what do you remember what your last duel was in college?
Yeah, Jared Hott.
Oh dang, that's not
Wow.
that's that's a good match.
Yeah, I lost 2-1 off of. Um, I took too long to mat return him in the second period, and I was like trying to mat return him, and I didn't let go, and so the ref had hit me with a stalling call because I didn't release, and
Uh-huh.
I had gotten hit with a stalling call in the first like 20 seconds of the match because I got pushed out, like shot out of bounds. So I gave up a stall point, and so I was down 2-1 after I escaped in the third, and so I ended up losing 2-1.
Dang. As you look ahead towards this event, there are I think the first two or three matches are set.
Yep.
You know who you're going to be wrestling, and like, is there, I don't know if scouting's the right word, but being prepared for this specific guy because you're probably set to hit these people?
Yeah. So I know we got Minnesota and Michigan, I think, in the first pool. So I think those guys, it's Tim Dudley's wrestling for Michigan, I think, and then Hayden Zilmer from Minnesota. But not really doing a whole lot of scouting. Just kind of want to go out there, compete, wrestle really, really hard, and want to see if the stuff that I've been working on um, works against some of these guys. And obviously I'm going to compete to win, right? But so I might have to revert back to some things that I know hopefully work. But gonna really try and just I want to see if the stuff that I think will help me accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish come April is working. So excited to just kind of to gauge where I'm at again because it's been a while. The goal is to hopefully dominate and send a message. Is what the plan is, but we'll see. We'll find out. I guess once we start competing and get things rolling.
When you say these things that I've been working on, is that like specific moves? Are they like positions? Is it tactics? Is it all the above?
It's a little bit of everything. It's more just subtle things that I think make a big difference. Like just being very disciplined with head position. Couple things like creating pressure, getting guys backing up, things like that. Couple of attacks, shot volume. I want to have a higher shot volume in my matches. I think I'm good defensively and I have good counters, but um, I'd like my shot volume to go up. I'd like to have a higher rate of attack. So yeah, just little things like that. Nothing too crazy.
Sure.
You wrestled Hayden Zilmer, I believe. Was it in 2019?
Yeah,
At
World Team
Trials?
Trials.
Yeah, and what do you remember from that match? I think it was close, right? 3-0. What do you remember from how the scoring happened in that match, and does that kind of tell you anything about what this one could look like?
Possibly. That's a long time. So things could have changed between now and then for him. I think things have changed between now and then for me. So um, obviously it's nice to, have previous wins over opponents that you're going to be wrestling. But again, go back to that same quote. You're only successful the moment you perform a successful act. You have to do it again. So is that something you're going to be dependent upon and rely on going to this match? No, it's like I got to show up and I got to go out there and compete on that specific day, Friday and Saturday. So, it's great to have a previous win over some of these guys, but again, I'm not thinking a whole lot about that, what's happened in the past, and just kind of staying present and moving forward.
Do you have a preference between an individual tournament and a dual meet format?
No, not really. I do think in tournaments, though, I wrestle better as the tournament goes on, because I start to find a rhythm throughout the day. And then I think just like historically, just based off my performances, like from what I've seen, like when I compete at tournaments, is like at the more I'm wrestling, the better I get, because I try and like make adjustments match to match, and I think I start to find a groove. Right? I don't know. But I also like dual meets too. I like the crowd. I like the team aspect. I grew up playing soccer and football. Those are my main sports, and so that's one thing that I miss. That I wish wrestling had more of. We have the dual meets, which brings that team aspect. So I really, really enjoy that. But being on the field with 10 other guys at the same time, all having to work together, I think is pretty cool.
It's gonna be interesting because normally dual meets in a college setting, there's a lot of pride on the line, but there's like actual money on the line in these dual meets. Have you guys as a team talked about like the criteria? A lot of these duels seem like they could be 3-3 splits, so it might be important to be thinking about not exactly bonus points, but like what it means to get a tech and a fall and why that's so important. And do you think that's going to be in the back of your mind at all, like doing the things during your matches that'll help the team be in the best position to win the duel?
I think it'll depend on the situation of the match when I go out to compete. Right, I'll know more about what the score is, team scores in a specific match. So, sure, it'll be in the back of my mind. But other than that, I think what's cool about wrestling is like, I just focus on taking care of my job and what I have to do in my match, and it will help the team ultimately. So I think you start with that, and then you go from there.
So like, you said normally in like individual tournaments, you feel like you wrestle better as the tournament goes on. Do you think the same thing, like that you think, would the same thing just happen duel after duel? Because it's this, physically.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And another question, you talked about, trying to make adjustments from match to match. I don't know if you watched Jordan Burroughs wrestle Zahid Valencia, but he made like these in-match adjustments that were crazy, right? By the second period, he was shutting down what was working in the first. Have you ever, do you make it mid-match adjustments? Have there been examples of where I guess that's not very easy, but have you ever caught yourself doing that?
I think that's actually something I would like to get better at. I think I do a good job reflecting after a match, thinking about what I've done well, what I haven't done well, and then also watching it and really being able to break it down and then making the adjustments after I've seen it. But being able to make in-match adjustments like that, I think, is critical, especially if you're trying to win an Olympic title or world championship title. And I think, guys like JB do a really good job, and that's why they've done what they've done.
Pretty
you know
amazing.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. That match was sick. That was a fun match to watch.
I was like, holy crap, 2 takedowns. Zahid, I don't know.
Yeah, and then JB said, yeah, that was fun.
I'm JB. What's up?
Yeah.
Is Adam Hall, or I don't know, is there somebody who like coaches, or you would be considered like the coach of the RTC?
Yeah, so Donnie Vincent and Adam Hall split RTC coaching responsibilities. So they team up and they both run the RTC together.
Sure. I don't know. Yeah. Has there been any bring it in and talk about the RTC, or specifically you have a meeting to talk about the RTC, or wrestling as a team or bonus points, whatever you want to call it?
We have a group chat and we've talked some about it, and we've thrown the rules. We also got a Google Doc that everybody shared in on that's got all the rules and stuff for us to look at and stuff. But we haven't sat down and talked about it collectively as a group outside of the group chat and the Google Doc. But we've all looked at it and kind of got a decent idea. I definitely got to go back and look at it because I don't know all of the rules and stuff. So I probably should know that.
I need to make sure I know it all too.
Yeah.
But I will. But when it comes time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what made you guys want to go ahead? I was going to ask you what made you guys want to put this cup on.
I mean, same thing that made you want to wrestle, right? We need same reason we put on Burroughs versus Heath. Same reason we put on Jake versus Chamizo. It's like we want there to be wrestling. Same reason there's these other cards going on, right? It's like you want to put on a good product. There's not wrestling going on. Let's make matches happen, and hopefully they can make money. Hopefully we can make money, and everybody can win and be happy about it and get matches.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: because I personally think it's helped senior level athletes get paid. The pandemic has, because there's more competitions and stuff like that. But like, where do you see the direction of that going from this point? Do you see it continuing to rise? How long do you like? What are your thoughts on athlete pay? Do you think it stays what it is now, or do you think it progressively increases over the next couple of years? Like, I'm curious, right? Because like streaming platforms like FloWrestling, I think are critical. Like, it's huge. Like, it's part of what's going to help senior level athletes get paid and all that other stuff. And so like that stuff's interesting to me too.
Yeah, well, I think the goal, obviously a lot of this was inspired or whatever you want to call it from the pandemic, right? Because what I just said, there's not competition elsewhere. And I hope that it continues and it grows, right? And I hope it's, these events have to make money for us and be able to pay the wrestlers to keep going. If we guarantee this money and we keep paying these wrestlers and we're not making the money back, that's not going to work, right? So hopefully it just continues to work, and the better it does, the better the athletes will be able to get paid in the end, and I think, we'd like to keep putting on events. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when eventually, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, I got to think the pandemic will be gone, but hopefully when that happens, we'll still be doing events. I think that'd kind of be the goal.
I think too that the question about, the direction, not just in terms of will athletes continue to get paid or will they get paid more, but what kinds of events will we see? I think that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. And this RTC Cup is a big part of it, because now we're putting teams against teams. Like, how much are people interested in that as compared to, an all-star
individual
card?
matchups?
Or like the 8-man brackets that we've been doing too. So it's like, what are people into the tournament? Are they into the teams? Are they into the all-star card? Like, what do we want to do? And so I hopefully, people will vote with their dollars, and and then we'll respond, I think. So
yeah.
How about this, exciting, Mike? Out of the 8-man tournaments or a card, and we haven't really seen this RTC, but we have an idea of what it's going to look like, right? Like, if you're the fan, Mike Mock, forget your actually competing. Which one do you like the best?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've enjoyed all of them, to be honest. I've enjoyed the individual tournaments, but then again, that's just because I like watching guys compete. I enjoy being a fan and just watching some of these matchups. I think it is exciting. I think the 8-man bracket was pretty cool though. I think putting big money on the line makes things always interesting to see who's going to show up, and but I'm also excited to see how like this RTC Cup pans out, right? Because if it goes well, like do RTCs put more emphasis on trying to bring guys in to where they have a full, complete like Olympic lineup. You know what I mean? And then does that eventually open things up for a potential like RTC league or what? You know what I mean? So just interesting to see like what direction things might go. But I enjoy it all, to be honest. I don't think there's one that I like more than as an athlete. The 8-man bracket is definitely definitely top of the list. But as a fan, I think just the matches are just fun to watch. Like the Zahid JB match was great, and then the 8-man bracket was fun to watch too. So let me ask the last question, just because I'm really
He
curious
took
to
over.
pick your guys' brain.
I like it.
He's asking the questions now. No, I love it. I'm messing with you.
I'm drawing a blank now. See, you messed me up. No, I'm just kidding.
That sucks when that happens to me plenty.
So what do you think are the most like important aspects of keeping these things rolling in a way that continues to put money in Flow's pocket, but also the athlete's pocket, right? Because if it's one way or the other, right, it's going to be hard to continue. But so what do you think are the most important aspects of keeping this thing rolling to where both sides are benefiting?
I think it's keeping things interesting, figuring out maybe which format fans like the most, right? If we're like, oh my gosh, what this one does way better than that, or whichever, then it's like you're just taking data every time you do it and applying that data to like the next time, right? How are we gonna do this? And I'm like, I asked you the question. I was thinking about it myself. Which one do I like the most? And I was getting ready to say like RTC Cup, just because there's so many people. Man, we haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. But there's so many. You know, every team's got studs, and all these teams are matching up. It's like all day long, you're just gonna have like Cologne versus, or it's not Cologne, but like Nishan versus Gross, or just I'm thinking of these like high scoring matches, or like a Yanni potential Yanni James Green, or like Wiz and Gable and whatnot, right? It's like you know some of that are gonna happen. There's some that you think might happen.
Right.
Now I'm just talking circles, but I'm excited about this RTC Cup.
Nah, I think the curiosity aspect is like how can you make fans curious enough to about what's going to happen to be like, I got to watch this because I want to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't easy, but that's what Zahid and Jordan offered. It's like, wait, Jordan versus Zahid?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you start like.
Yeah.
Well, no, Jordan's going to kill him. Is he going to kill him? Yeah, he'll kill him. He's pretty dang good, and he's bigger. And that's where my head went when I first.
Does the size play a role? You know, it's like, a lot of questions.
Now you're curious.
Yeah.
One of the things that's built some curiosity for me about this RTC Cup event, and I'm curious for your thoughts, Mike.
Yeah.
What do you think about the kind of the free agent, idea? We've got, you guys are, bringing Darian Cruz onto the team, to kind of maybe bolster that 57 kilo spot. What do you think about that? And I'm just curious. What do you think?
Initially I was like, man, this isn't a normal regular, because guys are bringing in people from everywhere. It's like, it's not true RTC versus RTC, which I think kind of mess with the integrity of like true RTC. Oh, this is the true Wolfpack RTC, to truly find out whose RTC is superior or better, right? And then so when they started bringing in other guys, it's like it kind of messes with the integrity of, okay, which RTC is purely better. But I do think it makes it more exciting as far as matchups. I do think it makes it more competitive. And now that we brought Darren in, it's like, I don't care as much. But
no, it's okay.
But, I think initially that's like what was my thought process. It's like, oh, is this really like an RTC Cup, or is this more like I think it is an RTC Cup, but I think it's tough because not every RTC has each weight class filled. So it's like I don't know if there really was another option either. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
like you said, maybe this inspires a league, or who knows, this to happen once, 2-3 times a year, where now RTCs are looking at filling out lineups, bringing guys in to fill each weight class. So that's definitely could happen. We'll see.
No, it's fun stuff to talk about, man.
Yeah. Okay. We could go a bunch of directions. We're getting to the end of the line. I know we got Matt Kolodzik here. We're gonna bring him on in just a minute.
Sweet.
Okay, Ed Ruth, is he in the room? He's like coaching with you guys, right?
He's been in the room for a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Just wrestling? Is he coaching? Is he cradling people?
He's I don't know if you saw Trent's tweet. Yeah. Whenever we signed him, that was funny.
What did he say?
He said
something.
Whenever the news that we had signed him or whatever, that he was with us full time, he said something about like, I don't think I've been cradled that much in my entire life for something like that.
Yeah, still
But
got
man, Ed still got it, man. So like he's training with us. He's wrestling with us every day. He'll go with Gwiz. He'll go with me. He can go with Tommy Gant. So it's cool because he's smooth, and he's like 205 pounds. But the way he's built, it's like he's not like I don't know. It's just like he can go with whoever, me, Tommy Gant, or Gwiz. So it's kind of nice. And then yeah, it's fun to pick his brain. He's a former world team member. He's a 3-time national champ. I think what's cool for me is when I was in high school, I didn't really know any wrestling at all. Like, I didn't know who coaches were. I remember Frank Beasley was on the side of my mat at Flow Nationals wearing a green collar T-shirt with a green B on it. And I remember thinking, like, oh, that's the Baylor wrestling coach. But Baylor didn't even have a wrestling program. So it was like, that's how much I didn't know. That was my junior year, and I played 6 at Flow. But I do remember in high school watching Ed, just some dude who was like walking up to the center of the mat who looked like he was half asleep, put on the ankle band, and then just tear dudes up. And so it was cool because I was like, man, I want to wrestle like that guy when I was in high school. And then we got to college, and he had graduated, I think, the year after my freshman year. So I never got to compete against him. But it's cool to compete with him. We don't have all the time, but we'll do situations and stuff like that. And it's also cool to pick his brain on the MMA side of things too.
Yeah, bet.
I think, I don't want to speak for Ed, but yeah, it's just it's a lot of fun, man. He's a fun guy to wrestle live with. I love having him in the room. He's super laid back guy, super approachable. I think the college guys are gonna like him a lot too. But yeah, man, it's been good. We got to spend some time together at Thanksgiving. Me, him, Tommy Gate, and Gwiz. So it's like he's starting to become part of the Wolfpack fam now. So that's been cool.
Yeah, that's
but
great.
Yeah, man, it's fun, man. He hasn't lost it. Even Gwiz will tell you the same thing.
I feel like that announcement kind of came out of nowhere. When did you first find out about Ed Ruth? Even considering coming on board.
Maybe like a week and a half before it was, because he showed up in Raleigh, and I think he was moving from California. And I don't know all the details of the situation, but he'd come in for a couple of days, and he got to wrestle around, and he wrestled with Gwiz, and then I guess he didn't necessarily have like a complete plan yet. And so then things just really quickly, we were like, Gwiz, we're all telling him, like, yo, we need to lock him down. Like, we need to get him in ASAP. We'd love to have him around, and then things just started rolling really quickly, and we were able to make that happen. So.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. Glad to hear he's out there and that you guys are liking the situation. All right, Mock, we are down to the end of the line, but I'm going to play this game. We got our next guest. As I told you, it's Matt Kolodzik. We call this the overlapping question, okay? We'll start with you, Mock. We'll give you an opportunity to ask Matt a question. We'll let him answer, and you guys can have it out. And then, Matt, you'll have an opportunity to ask Mock a question. We'll let him answer it, and then we'll get rid of Mock, and then we'll move on with you. So, first of all, welcome to the show, Matt. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Just got back from practice, and happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, Mark. Whenever you're ready, let her rip.
Hey, Mike.
All right. Let's see. You're in the Jersey area. Where are you originally from? Again, real quick.
Ohio.
Gotcha.
That wasn't your question, was it?
No, that wasn't my question. I would have been upset with myself if that was my question.
Yeah.
Do you like Dirty Jers better, or do you like Ohio better?
You can't ask me that on the show, man, because
come on,
my parents are going to see this.
I think I know the answer.
Really. Yeah, home is home. You can't ever turn on home. But man, there's like, you can't be an hour away from Philly and New York in Ohio. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much more going on the East Coast, which is really fun. And it keeps you on your toes. But I go back to Ohio, and it's like doesn't matter when I go back, nothing changes. I left for boarding school, came back, nothing changes. Went to Princeton, came back, nothing changes. It's a really great place to settle down and raise a family. But I will say that there's not a whole lot going on in Dayton, Ohio these days.
Nice.
Go Flyers.
That's awesome. Love it, man.
Yeah, go Flyers. Except that. They were telling me about like the question thing, and the first thing that popped into my head, you kind of hit on it already, but I feel like the rest of the world has slowed down, and the wrestling world has just hit the gas pedal since this pandemic happened. So have you personally experienced that? Have you been speeding up a little bit, or has it just been business as usual?
Just business as usual. Because I haven't really competed a whole lot. I think for the speeding up aspect, I think a lot of it has to do with like the competition and stuff. Like Tommy and Gwiz have both competed, twice already. Both of them competed on the Iowa card. They both competed on the Chael Sonnen Wrestling Underground card. And then they're also competing in the RTC Cup. So it's been a good year for those guys. But yeah, so for me, it's just kind of been same old, man. Eat, sleep, train. I'll wake up, go to practice, come back, lunch, hang out, go lift or go wrestle again, come back, eat, and then take care of my dog because I feel bad because he's cooped up all day. So I'll hang out with him.
Oh, yeah. What kind of dog do you have?
So I got a Doberman. It was actually like
that's a big boy.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He's a year and a half. He's a goofball, man. He looks mad intimidating, but he's actually the biggest softie ever. It's actually like yeah, pretty much. And Kenny Monday actually posted it on his story on his Instagram because it was like a family friend of theirs that was getting rid of the dog. So I had hit up Kenny about getting the dog.
Oh, no way.
So I ended up, so kind of cool. I got it from someone else in the wrestling world, so that was pretty sweet.
That's awesome.
Wrestling dog.
That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, Mock. Any parting words before we let you get on with your day?
Hope you guys have a great day. If you guys go somewhere for lunch, eat a little extra for me. And I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, man. Excited for this RTC Cup, and I guess I'll see you guys pretty soon.
Yeah, I'll see you in Cincinnati, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you guys are a good one.
All right, you too. Have a great day. All right, we're here with Matt Kolodzik. Matt, I guess the same question you asked, Mock, I'm going to ask you. Have you slowed down, sped up, or kind of stayed the same since quarantine hit?
Oh, definitely sped up, except for the few months there where I was home. That was weird. I didn't wrestle for 3 months, and I haven't ever not wrestled for more than like 3 weeks, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it was super weird. I was out of my mind. I was like cleaning the garage and like building shelves, and it was the worst. Just anything to keep myself occupied. I'm sure my parents loved it that I was like cleaning the house, but I needed to get out, and I did come back to Jersey in mid-July. And after that, it was just business as usual. Although you can't like get in the college room is one thing that we can't do. So we're training off site, and then limited practice room. Just the RTC guys. Were enough guys to get even partners. So that was tough. That's still a little bit weird, but we've been doing a pretty good job. We haven't had any outbreaks or anything with the Corona stuff. So I'm happy that I can just get back into it.
Yeah, I bet. And this, you've talked about the 3 months at home or whatever, how challenging they were because you didn't get to wrestle. Man, you had a really challenging, a month or two leading up to that, right? You're not wrestling, and all of a sudden, at the end of the season, you decide to go, and then it's like no season. What was that experience like and the week or two leading up to when everything fell apart? Did you see it coming, and did you think, holy, I don't know, what did you think? How did you handle that?
So weird. Yeah, so weird. It was so. I should back up by that. Kind of starts at around the end of December, New Year's. At Midlands, I had gone to Midlands just to watch, even though I wasn't competing. I think that was right after the U.S. Open, and I went to the
Yeah.
Midlands tournament and sitting in the stands with my dad, my parents, and watching it, and like watching all those guys compete. Like, man, I could have won this tournament. Like, I think I could have won this tournament. But obviously, water under the bridge. I made my decision to take the year off and put my eggs in that basket. No use looking back. And then I get back to campus, and maybe 3 or 4 days later, Ayers calls me into his office. I'm thinking he's like, hey, Reese is at Rutgers on Tuesday, but he's going to be here on Wednesday. And, like just laying out the week, right? And like, so I can coordinate my practices. And Ayers sits me down. He's like, so, how would you feel about wrestling at NCAAs this year? And I'm thinking like, no way. I can't do that because Princeton won't allow it. But apparently there is some ways that it's happened before. And in addition to that, Mike D'Angelo had gotten hurt. And so we didn't have a 49-pounder. On top of that, we had a chance to beat Cornell for the first time in 15 years, win the Ivy League, go out and beat Rutgers, win that match, which would be big, which we did. And then I'm thinking, okay, so roll into that and then just go straight into EIWAs and NCAAs ready to go. And that was pretty much my mentality. And I thought about it a lot, prayed about it a lot, but I was certain it was the right decision. One of those things where I'm like, what could possibly stop me from accomplishing my goals? Like, what on earth could possibly, short of an act of God? Lo and behold.
Pretty close.
And the crazy part is that NCAAs are usually on the 15th of March. But they were on like the 21st or 22nd this year because of the venue, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the guys from Minnesota. They actually got to go to the stadium and see the mats getting laid out and all of that. So, yeah, I'm not the most heartbroken, but I was heartbroken.
Yeah. Did you see it coming? I don't know. It probably was within that week. I think the hockey and basketball or whatever got shut down. They announced no fans. Did you have hope until the end, or what was that hope like kind of diminished by the time it actually got announced?
Oh, I didn't think that it was actually the case until like 2 months into quarantine. I was still operating under the assumption that like we will still figure a way to make this happen. I remember I was like sitting around in the dining hall and like talking to a bunch of the other athletes as they're getting their seasons canceled, and I'm like, well, yeah, wrestling announced that it's going to be no spectators, only the athletes, and I'm fine with that. Like, they had asked me, they're like, wow, is that going to be crazy? And I'm like, I don't really care. They're like, is Princeton going to let you travel to NCAAs? And I'm like, I'll walk there. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, just get me to the tournament and I'm wrestling. And then when they shut it down, I was like, no, that's not real. That's not. It may be postponed, right? But it was definitely shut down.
Did you find out? We have been talking to a lot of people, and like, did you find out at practice, during practice, or when whoever Ayers, I'm guessing, called the team in or something, and was like, hey guys, I'm sorry, they're not doing it this year.
I was halfway through a drill I was drilling with Reese. We were doing single finishes, and it was like, I can't remember if somebody called or if Ayers walked in, but they were like, yeah, it's canceled. And I was like halfway through my drill, sitting there. I was like, well, should we keep wrestling, or should I just leave, or what's going on?
Yeah.
It's very much that left in suspense kind of feeling. So that's how I found out. We had a team meeting, and like everybody was devastated.
Yeah.
So it was strange. It was really strange.
I mean, did you finish drilling or did you stop? I'm just curious.
No, we finished the practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to get better no matter what. And I wasn't about to be like, oh, well, that's senior year. See you guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Man.
So we definitely kept on drilling, and obviously we picked that right back up when I came back in July.
You talked about how, when you decided to come back, part of that was a conversation with Coach Ayers, and you're thinking about we can beat Cornell, we can win the Ivy League, we can do this, and I mean, you guys were in a legitimate position to challenge for a team trophy as well. Were those team goals, like the fact that those were also taken away, was that extra devastating? Not just your own individual goal of winning NCAA title, but the team part of it. Was that, I don't know, how did that hit you?
Absolutely. I mean, there's my personal goals, but on top of that, there's this tradition of Princeton wrestling that is always talked about. And we're a young program in general. I know it doesn't feel like it, but I always talk about how my brother was on the team in 2008, and that was Air's third, maybe fourth year. And it has been a long haul for Ayers and the rest of the coaching staff. And they've built this thing up brick by brick. And to have that kind of not come to fruition, it'll happen eventually. But to have it not happen with me was a little bit tough, because I was always in the position to help lay one more brick down, help reach one more milestone. And that was kind of the way that I saw it. It was almost fate that I was going to be the guy that won the national title for the first time, and then dozens would follow after me. But that didn't end up happening, which was really, really strange. I don't know if I still fully understand that internally, even though I know it mentally.
Okay, that's kind of part of my next question. I said, when did you, I think, realize hope was gone? Or you said like 2 months later, like after they announced it. I don't know if you were like kind of joking or kind of being serious, or was there a moment when you're like, we're not doing this ever? Like you kind of thought maybe they'd figure out and they'd do it in the middle of summer or fall, but like, was there a moment when you were like, it's not possible? And that like actually hit you?
Yeah, definitely after I came, because I should back up. The after you keep on moving the milestone, right? So if you're not going to have an NCAA tournament this year, obviously I'm competing in the NCAA tournament next year, right? Obviously I'm going to petition for another year of eligibility. I wrestled for 3 days senior year. They can't possibly reject my petition. And then the NCAA just like, I don't really know what they're like a black box. You don't hear from them. Except they're like, oh, no, of course you don't get your eligibility back. Like you wrestled senior year. Of course not. And I'm sitting here thinking like, but the only reason I wrestled is because I was promised a tournament. That didn't happen. And I get it, extenuating circumstances. But when that decision came down, I was like, it doesn't take a lot to get me mad, but I was pretty angry about that. And I still don't fully understand it. But to have all of a sudden you're holding out for what, 6 months, and that's 6 months of my college wrestling career isn't over.
Yeah,
obviously that's just how I'm processing it internally, and then that is not true anymore. Your assumptions, I don't know. It feels like the rug gets pulled out from under you, which is tough.
Was there always a desire to wrestle post college?
Yeah, I think there was. I think a lot of my trajectory with wrestling has that foundation was laid kind of by my brother. He came to Princeton and he had, it was a uphill battle for him a lot of the time. And me following in my brother's footsteps for most of it has been, okay, so how far can we take this? I know that I'm pretty good at wrestling, and a lot of times it's strange to just walk on the mat and get off after winning winning a match against a kid, and to have Ayers or one of the coaches be like, that kid was pretty good, right? And I'm like, oh, I guess he's pretty good. That was kind of how I wrestled all the time. And so now we're in this place of, well, how far can I take this? And I definitely think that I can take it further. The lack of structure, just with how schedules are going right now in terms of matches and practices, is frustrating. It's definitely not the best for training, that the whole world doesn't know what next. But I think with these matches, that's starting to get a little bit of a rhythm back, which is better for me. I always wrestle better under some sort of structure.
To your brother and watching him come up through Princeton and Ayers, like Princeton is arriving, right? I don't know what define has arrived, but Princeton's in the mix, right? Whereas maybe when your brother came to school, they weren't as prominent of a program. Did Ayers have this? We're going to build. We are going to win trophies. We're going to contend for. Do you remember him or hearing from your brother him laying out these things and I guess a vision?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my dad talking about it when my brother got back from his recruiting trip, and a little bit of it almost sounded like delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's like, we say this now in hindsight, but a little bit of the culture at Princeton was just so young, and we almost lost our program. At one point, we always joked that we were a drinking team with a wrestling problem, and now it's definitely the other way around, which is better. But it's been one of those things where the culture, the monumental shift that Eris has really structured himself. He has been the architect and the engineer behind all of that. Has really made it to the point where, when we win the Ivy League title and people are like, oh, they beat Cornell. Maybe anybody that wasn't paying attention to Princeton wrestling before is like, oh, wow, that's big. And it's just one of those things where, oh, we had a couple guys place at Midlands, and then it's, oh, we had a couple champs at Midlands, and then it's, oh, they had a couple Ivy League champs and EIWA champs, and then, All-Americans and all the way up to national champs.
When you were younger and you remember maybe your dad coming home from the recruiting trip with your brother and hearing about this delusions of grandeur, at what point did you picture yourself being one of those and being maybe that NCAA champ that was like going to break through? Like, were you picturing that while you were in high school, or was it once you got in college?
I'd say it wasn't until junior year that I really started to think about college wrestling seriously, because wrestling had always just been part of my life, and I knew that I was pretty good with it, and I knew that I was probably going to go to a school with wrestling and wrestle in college. Yep. But I didn't know if I was one of those guys that qualified at nationals one year by the time he graduated, or if I could really make a run at it. So by the time I realized that I was capable of making a run at it, that was probably junior year at Blair.
Okay. Interesting. And so I guess let's shift our attention maybe a little bit to the RTC Cup. When did you first hear about this? And did you know that NJRTC was going? Or were you like, oh, okay, there's a cup. Are we going to be in it?
It was, you know me, I'm not on social media, I'm not following things, which is probably to my detriment these days. I really need to get back on Twitter and Instagram. But Reese mentioned it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then it was one of those things where he was like, I don't know if it's guaranteed. I don't know if we're actually doing this and what weight you would be or whatever the specifics were. But eventually he did let me know probably about a week and a half ago. And he was like, yeah, we're definitely doing this. The 4th, we're going to Cincinnati, which is so funny because the guy who's hosting that, God, his name escapes me right now. I actually was in the Barbarian Apparel guy. I was actually in practices when I was in Ohio. My dad would drive me to his high school where he was coaching.
Okay.
And so I texted him. I was like, hey, the gear's really sick. I really liked it. Like, we got the neck gaiters for like the masks.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really nice. Like, yeah, all that stuff. Keep it coming. And he was like, oh, good to hear from you again. I don't know if you remember, but you were in my room when you were like 14 years old. And it kind of takes me back. I was like, whoa.
In Cincinnati? You were training with him?
Yeah, in Cincinnati. He was.
Oh, because you're from Dayton.
Yeah, he was a coach at Mason High School. Yeah, I'm from Dayton, and he was a coach at Mason High School, which is a big high school in the suburbs of Cincinnati. And my dad used to drive me to practices all over the area, and that's how we originally met each other.
Okay, cool. And it looks like you guys are set to wrestle the Ohio RTC and Cornell, I believe. Have you given any thought to either wrestling Yanni or Etchmandia or Sasso?
No, not really. Like I said, I'm not. I'll watch some film when Coach tells me to watch film. And I do like to study other people. Like, I love to study wrestling. That was something I really picked up probably 3 or 4 years ago, that I just love to spend time picking apart other people, and even if they're not at my weight, just seeing how they wrestle. But in general, I don't really worry about who I'm going to wrestle, because then the focus on, I've noticed that I just wrestle terribly if I'm worried about the other guy, because then I'm not focused on getting into my zone. And that's happened a bunch. That happened at the US Open a few times. That happened in my match against Lugo, where it takes you out of your own headspace and puts you into theirs, which is never good.
Interesting. What do you remember about those matches where you focused on another guy? Like, what do you specifically remember taking me out of the headspace? Is that thinking too much about what he's going to do? And is that trying to watch his feet or something? Or if you can define
Yeah.
it.
So like the best example was like when I wrestled Ironman at the U.S. Open this past year, the first time, and not Ayers, but Reese was like, "Hey, he's got that little shuck thing that he does. Just watch out for that." And then like the whole match, I'm sitting there like, "Oh, better watch out for the shuck."
Yeah.
Like sitting there, like changing my stance, changing the way I tie up because I'm worried about this one thing. That also happened at the U.S. Open when I wrestled Frank Molinaro 2 years ago. I was like, "Oh, watch out for the lefty high C," which is ironic because lefty high C is my deal too. But that just takes you out of your element. Whereas I noticed that a lot of the times I wrestle really well if I'm just concerned about what I'm going to do and scoring points.
I mean, you're a competitor, you're an athlete who competes. Do you follow or watch the sport very much for leisurely entertainment?
Nah, it stresses me out, man. I can't watch my teammates without getting tensed up.
Really?
And the way that comes, oh yeah, that comes across is like a guy will get off the mat and I want to like go up and grab him by the shoulders and be like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" I can only imagine how my coaches feel because I'm the same way. Yeah, I want to like do something about it. I don't know how good of a coach I am because of that, but when it comes to watching wrestling to relax, I don't think so. I like to watch wrestling to pick apart when you can get in that analytical mindset. I almost feel like I do when I'm, doing a problem set for engineering or something like that. It's nice to it doesn't feel like work. You just get in the zone and you run through it and oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about, and trying to figure things out.
Interesting.
So you guys are going to be kind of partnered up with the Southeast Regional Training Center. What's that been like, kind of having two RTCs come together for one team? What's the communication been like between you guys and them? Or, just this little bit unique.
It's been good because, well, I should say that I've only been tangentially kind of involved in those communications. Like Reese just tells me I'm going to wrestle, and I'm like, "All right, yes, coach." But every once in a while, I hear a little bit about the partnership and who we're going to have, and I'm like, "All right, let's go. That's awesome." Because obviously, all of the athletes wrestling are incredibly talented and incredibly well qualified. So it's nice to have. It's been weird, honestly, to be in college, just as Princeton is kind of up and coming, and finally, like Pat Bruckey All-American, Pat Glory All-American, and now all of a sudden you have this community of guys who are really dedicated. When you're on the international circuit or you're trying to make an Olympic team, everybody is the highest caliber. And being surrounded by those guys just makes you so much better. Since I've been working out with NJRTC exclusively, I can just tell that the mindset is different because everybody's bought in, especially guys like Nate Jackson. That guy's on a tear right now, and it's scary to watch him in practice. Sometimes whoever's his partner is like, "Yeah, man, I think Nate thinks I'm like a world champ or something because he treats me like I'm a world champ every time we wrestle, as in like he brings it all. It doesn't matter who he's wrestling with."
As for the NJRTC practices, are they? And I know senior level is less structured than college, right? Coach, a lot of times in college, kind of whistling you through it. Is Reese or somebody running practices, or is there a loose structure, or is it more so on your own?
A lot of it's come in drill, and during drill we get specific with. It's not a lot of guys, so it's really easy to get, "Hey, you need this. Hey, you need that." And I'll drill with Reese or Boris or somebody like that. And after that, we'll just go live. Usually if we're in regular training phase, we'll go at least 15-20 minutes alive. And then if not, if we're just on kind of a taper phase, we'll go one match and then be done.
Got it. And you mentioned, like I said, do you watch wrestling for leisure? You said, "No, it stresses me out." I don't know. Dual meets versus individual tournament, right? An individual tournament, there's scattered and your teammates are wherever and you're probably not really paying attention to them. You're just getting ready for I'm on deck and mat 4 or whatever. At a dual meet, this is like one mat and you're like not forced to watch your teammates, but kind of.
Yeah.
Does that make a difference, or do you like want some of these guys like I guess I want to leave the room until I'm up, or how do you approach that?
I like the dual meet format, and I've noticed that I think I do wrestle better in a dual meet format just because it gets you amped up. Now the worry is that you're watching for match one and then you're like emotionally drained by the time you get out there because you've just been watching all your teammates. But I wrestle better when I'm under a little bit of stress, and those dual meet formats totally bring the energy level up. And that I love that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then James Green is splitting time with you guys, right? You guys are like splitting time at 65 kilos. Has there been any talk of who might wrestle where?
Not that I know of, other than the fact that Reese told me that James and I are going to split matches. I don't actually know James all that well, other than obviously his reputation and how good he is at wrestling in his film. But it'll be nice to actually meet him and see how he wrestles. I'm sure I can learn a lot from him, and I'm happy to be sharing the stage with him.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
I wanted to circle back to something real quick. There's this photo of you from one of the dual meets in Jadwin Gym, and I'm thinking about how you said, just talking with you, it seems like you're usually very analytical, but that you can get pretty emotionally invested in a dual meet. Do you know the photo I'm talking about, where like there's just like veins like popping out on your shoulders, and you're just like you got, I think, this big moment in this year right after your red shirt got pulled. What dual meet was that? Where you had a really big spot? You got.
I think you're probably talking about Rutgers, where I had a pin. I've never pinned in a dual meet, and I've rarely ever pinned in a tournament. Just folk style is like that. I guess that's just how my wrestling kind of coalesced over the years. But I was talking to Coach Ayers, and it's one of those things where he's like, "Hey, when you're out there, you need to stop thinking so much and start just letting things fly. And if you get amped up, that's totally cool. We'll reel you back in if we need to reel you back in. But for the most part, I always thought about wrestling. Like I said, I don't watch wrestling for fun. It's more like it's my job. I need to do my job, and I need to do it well, right? And so it's shake hands, go to the corner, shake the coach's hand, get off the mat, no showboating, none of that. But over the years, it's one of those things where getting excited is good. It's good to be emotionally invested. It's good to pump your ego up because it helps you compete. Now, obviously, some people take it too far when they showboat a little bit too much. But in terms of just competing well, I think it's good to get excited about it. It's an exciting sport, and that's kind of where my head's at recently.
You said Coach told you, don't think too much or whatever the case is. Did you find that used to happen? You used to think, you called yourself analytical. Was that happening where you're overthinking something or overanalyzing, whether it's before or during the match?
Yeah, that happens, and I refer to it sometimes as like the Ivy League syndrome, because you're told nothing all day long, but like you really have to think and concentrate and make sure that you're really picking apart whatever. I'll be in an engineering class, and it's like the professor's telling you that you need to visualize whatever it is he's talking about, and he's like, no, don't take notes. I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying and really zero in. And so the whole time you're in this analytical mindset of I really need to think and focus on what's happening. But in a wrestling match, all of that stuff that's important to win the match, it's already deep down inside you, to the point where if he hits a shot, your body knew how to react like the millisecond that he shot. You don't have time to be like, oh, that's a single leg. I should really do something about that. That's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
And so getting yourself out of that mindset, even on a day-to-day basis with the practice.
Yeah.
You walk into the wrestling room, be where your feet are. Leave your problems at the door, leave the test you have coming up at the door, and just focus on wrestling. And that was definitely an uphill battle. And that's something that I love helping the guys with, because I can tell that it gets to them sometimes, just the stress of being at Princeton. It's helpful to just take a second and be, like I said, be where your feet are.
Did it take a while for you to figure that out, to let go of the test that you had or that's upcoming, or the engineering problem you're going to have to deal with after practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are so many deadlines and they pile up, but it's one of those things where it doesn't help you to think about them. And honestly, that's what I like about wrestling for Princeton, because that sort of thing doesn't stop. I'm sure you guys know there's always another deadline. There's always another thing to do. There's always another wrestling match or another show. So it doesn't help you to stress about the future if it doesn't help what you're doing in the present. So that was definitely a learning curve, to answer your question. It took a while to kind of get over that hump.
What's it like juggling not even Princeton, but engineering at Princeton with a full, one of the best, you're on a D1 team, you're vying for an NCAA title. I know what it was like in my college experience, and it was like school, but like wrestling, you got to get your school done so you can wrestle. Maybe it's not the same with you. I feel like they're equally important. Maybe school's more important.
Yeah, I would say they're equally important, but it's definitely it's different. You know that you walk into an Ohio State room, a Rutgers room, Michigan, pretty much any Big Ten school or any top 25 program. You walk in there, and 9 times out, they're not asking you how your midterm went. Nobody cares. You're in practice, wrestle. And one of the things that is different about a place like Princeton is just because the emotional stress level is so high. It's like you're getting taxed extra. It's hard to sleep because you're stressed about your tests coming up or whatever. And if you don't know how to manage that, you kind of do crumble on the rest of that just because you're tapped out by the time you step on the mat. But it is one of the things. Ayers and I have conversations all the time. When I was in school, he'd be like, "Hey, so where are you at this week? Do you need a day off?" Because he knew that in the long run, that sort of thing helped me to perform well and not burn out by the time I got to the wrestling mat. I was actually really close to burning out sophomore year. I was dealing with a shoulder injury. It was really just overuse. But on top, I remember my reaction was after meeting with you want me to spend an hour and a half in the training room now? Like, I don't have an hour and a half. I barely have 15 minutes. Yeah. What am I going to do? But taking one step at a time and prioritizing the most important things is probably the best thing that you can do at a place like Princeton.
Had you ever realized that doing less can be more? Right? We're taught like harder, shoot another shot, but it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. Sometimes that's what you actually need.
Absolutely, and that's something that I stress all the time when I'm talking to the college guys, or even with my own training. You're absolutely right. Sometimes less is more, and that's so counterintuitive coming from a place like I was raised in Ohio. I worked out with St. Paris Graham every day. Yeah. Jeff Jordan was my coach for 14 or 15 years. He was my brother's coach for 14 or 15 years. The attitude was you come into practice, you drill for 10 minutes, and then you strap it on and get ready to go live for an hour and a half. And it doesn't matter if you're hurt, you're tired, you just did it. And that you can do that in high school. And you can be very successful in high school just being tough as nails. But when it comes to college wrestling, guys have tricks, guys have technique, guys have funk. You can't just power through everything, which is hard because that's your initial reaction. It's like, oh, this sucks. I'm not doing as much as I should be doing. I need to go harder. And a lot of times that can be a vicious feedback loop where you just get more and more run into the ground.
Yeah. You mentioned, like, I think you said your sophomore year of college, you started to experience burnout. How bad? Did you ever consider like packing it in and be like, I'm done? Or was it just like a kind of a mid-season rut? Or I don't even know if it was mid-season, but typically those things probably happen in season.
It was kind of an end of the season rut right before March because that's when I like couldn't lift my shoulder above my head. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I want to win an NCAA title and I can't lift a shoulder above my head. It wasn't fun. It wasn't more like me thinking about packing it in. I don't think I was never considering anything like that. It was more like, well, can I do engineering in wrestling? That sort of thing. Where it was like, maybe this is too hard. And there are going to be those moments of doubt, no matter what. But I kind of put my chips in this. I put myself in this situation, right? And you never really know what you're made of until you're tested by fire, so to speak. And so that was kind of the hottest moment of that forging process for me, at least.
Sure.
Man, engineering is such a challenging field of study, and it sounds like a big priority for you. How does that, like, how do you kind of continue to focus on engineering past academics, and as you're also focusing on your senior level wrestling career?
Yeah, that's been weird because I had to take another semester off because a class I need to graduate isn't offered until the spring. So I haven't been in school right now. But I haven't really ever had to deal with the senior level wrestling and school. Luckily, when I do have to deal with it, it'll only be for one semester. But it's weird. it's weird. I'm sure you guys know Adam Kuhn. I'm sure he's been on the show.
Sure.
And we've talked sometimes. We've had some pretty nerdy conversations. And I like to pretend that I'm smart. Adam is one of those guys that is actually really smart. He's going to grad school at one of the best aerospace engineering programs in the country and best wrestling programs in the country. And so that guy knows how to manage both sides of that. And that's something I've talked to him about. But overall priorities, man, if you care about something enough, you'll make it happen.
I think he said he hopefully he cares enough about it, and hopefully he can make it happen. He's trying to build a spaceship big enough for that he can get in, because whatever they have right now, he's too big. He's not allowed. Wouldn't that be something he built?
Yeah.
You think he can do it?
Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me? My headphones just ran out of battery.
Yeah, I can hear you. Do you think Adam Kuhn can make that spaceship?
Oh, absolutely. That guy's incredibly smart and also just driven. One of the things that I like to remember is that, like, if you have a reason for doing something, then it's going to carry you through whatever kind of challenges face you. And at least from what I've read about Adam and also talking to him, he has a deep reason for why he loves aerospace engineering. He has a deep reason for why he has the dreams that he has, and also why he's as good at wrestling as he is. And so I have no doubt that anything that guy puts his mind to, he can do. I admire that guy so much.
Yeah, he's badass. All right, we're kind of getting to the end of the line, but I got a little game I want to play with you. It's wins and whoopings. So, from the first match you ever wrestled to the last one you ever wrestled, is there one win that sticks out for any reason? It could be overcoming a childhood foe. It can be beating an All-American or NCAA champ or winning a tournament or whatever, right? Is there one win that sticks out for any reason? And is there one whooping that was just like so bad that it sticks out? And it's like, one of those ones where you come off the mat questioning yourself and like, yeah. So you can take a sec if you need to think about this. You can answer either one first.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the bad one, which is it was a pretty well-known match. Is when I wrestled Anthony Ashnault my junior year at the Rutgers duel. That kid spent like a year and a half studying my film, and so he was like, talk about being well prepared. And I'm going in there like I usually go into matches, like, well, let's see how this goes. And that's what I did when we wrestled before at Grapple at the Garden. I had beat him in overtime, and I was like, oh, that kid was pretty good. Cool. Next. And then I went into that one, and he just absolutely picked me apart. He had studied every single aspect of my wrestling, and he knew exactly where to strike. So that was probably my biggest, like, oh, man, wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Sure.
In terms of wins, I would say it was my sophomore year third place match against Sorensen. I think it was Sorensen, and I didn't really know who he was. I didn't know who anybody in my bracket was besides maybe like Zane. And I know I'm the worst.
That's nothing wrong with it. That's our job, not yours.
Right, exactly, and that's what I tell Coach. I'm like, we'll leave that to Flo. We'll leave that to Bader and for those guys to pick apart. But I got off the match, and Ayers and Dubuque were like really hyped up, like everybody's going crazy, and I'm like, wasn't I supposed to win? They're like, yeah. But that guy's like pretty good. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so that was one of those wins where I was like, oh, maybe I am pretty good at this wrestling thing.
I would say you're pretty good at this wrestling thing. David?
I think so. Yeah. It's confirmed.
Well, thank you. That means a lot, guys.
Yeah, you bet, man. And we're super stoked, obviously, this weekend in Cincinnati. That's really what we got for now. Before we go, we'll let you have the final word. If there's anything you want to say about anything.
Anything I want to say about anything?
Yeah.
I don't know. If anybody knows how to get my Instagram back from whoever hacked it, just reach out because I need that. But in terms of wrestling, I couldn't tell you. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I'll see you guys in Cincinnati, and I can't wait.
Did you try at Instagram? Call them or something? They might.
Yeah, man. I've probably sent 50 emails. They won't respond to no texts, no calls, no nothing.
When did your Instagram get hacked? And what's the address? At what?
It's at KO Kolodzik, and it
Okay.
got hacked maybe a year ago. And I've been sending emails like once a week for every like probably at least once a month for at least a year and a half now. So
Really? Is it
yeah,
is it like is it still hacked, or was it just like hacked and you can't get back in, or
no,
people
it's
still
hacked, and
posting on
whoever.
it?
I'm sure it was like a bot, a Russian bot or something. Like
Yeah.
just they haven't posted anything, but they have the account, and I can't get back on the recovery email or anything. So it's definitely, and they do have a system for it, but the more I try, they're like, oh, sorry, we don't. It doesn't make it past their like automatic filter, so I can't talk to anybody.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I find a phone number or something like that and call them up.
Yeah, if you got anything like that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't have Mark Zuckerberg on speed dial anymore. I know he owns
Me either,
Facebook.
man.
They own
But I
They own it.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. You know, we can't dig around, and if we ever do figure that out, we'll let you know. But good luck on that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks
Cool,
for having
man.
me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll see you in Cincinnati.
See you in Cincinnati. Bye.
All right, thanks,
See
Matt.
you,
Have a
Matt.
great day. All right, great show, man. Matt Kolodzik, all kinds of fun. And a really interesting and a little heartbreaking hearing his story of what 3 matches or something, 3 weeks he was in the lineup, and then
I remember I was out in
It
Wyoming
happens.
for a couple matches when that news broke, and it was like, whoa, like what does this mean? I like immediately started looking at the team race implications, and it was like, whoa, like Princeton could be in the top 4. They could be in the top 3. Like they could bring a trophy home. They went from being like a good top 20-ish team to like they could legitimately win. And Kolodzik had wins over like all the top 5 ranked guys or something at 149, and it was like he could win this thing. Princeton's gonna get a trophy. Is like this insane news, and then man, just brutal for him and for the team to just get that rug pulled out from under him.
pulled out from right around him. But he rebounded. He's gonna be fine. He's smart as can be, and no doubt he'll be successful in life.
I have no doubt about that as well.
Yeah, and then Mike Macchiavello, great talking to old Mock, and we're gonna see him this weekend as well with boatloads of competitors out of Cincinnati for the RTC Cup. So appreciate you guys starting your week off with us. For David Bray, I'm Mark Bader. We'll see you tomorrow.